Critic rants against social media. Fake life. Until his mother shows him her priceless family photo. You people are living a lie and you don't even know it. Marcus Chen's voice cut through his home studio like a blade, his finger jabbing at the camera with the righteous fury of a man convinced he alone saw the truth. Behind him, walls lined with journalism awards and framed magazine covers created the perfect backdrop for his latest crusade against what he called the digital delusion, destroying an entire generation. At 45, Marcus had built his career on being the voice of reason in an unreasonable world. His YouTube channel, Reality Check with Marcus Chen, boasted 3 million subscribers who tuned in weekly to watch him dismantle everything wrong with modern society. Today's target the Instagram generation and their pathetic addiction to fake validation. What Marcus didn't know was that 30 feet away in the modest kitchen of the same house, his 72-year-old mother was cradling her cracked iPhone like it contained the secrets of the universe. On its scratched screen glowed a photo taken 3 years ago. Marcus, his sister Lisa, and their late father sharing Christmas dinner, all of them laughing at something no one could remember anymore. In less than an hour, these two worlds would collide in a way that would shatter everything Marcus thought he knew about memory meaning and what makes a life real. If you find value in real stories, told with clarity and truth, make sure to subscribe to stay informed with Real Father Story. The Digital Prophet. Marcus adjusted his ring light for the third time, checking his reflection in the camera monitor with the practiced vanity of someone who had spent 2 decades perfecting his on-screen presence. His salt and pepper beard was meticulously trimmed, his navy blazer pressed to perfection, his expression calibrated to convey just the right amount of intellectual disdain. "Good evening, truth seekers." He began, his voice carrying the authoritative tone that had made him a household name among media critics. Today we're talking about the greatest con job in human history. The lie that your online life is your real life. Marcus had discovered his calling 15 years ago as a newspaper columnist, back when newspapers still mattered. He'd written scathing pieces about reality TV celebrity culture and the decline of authentic journalism. But it was the rise of social media that had truly ignited his missionary zeal. "Look at them." He continued pulling up screenshots of Instagram posts on his secondary monitor. 20-year-olds posing in rented cars pretending they're successful. Teenagers editing their faces until they look like plastic dolls chasing likes from strangers who don't even know their real names. The irony that Marcus himself had built his career on seeking validation from an audience was lost on him. In his mind, there was a fundamental difference between his work, which he saw as educational and necessary, and the narcissistic performance art of social media influencers. His phone buzzed with real-time comments from viewers. "Preach Marcus. Finally someone telling the truth. These kids need to hear this." Each notification fed his sense of purpose, confirming his role as a digital prophet, calling society back to authenticity. Marcus had been born in 1978, perfectly positioned to remember life before the internet, while building his career during its rise. He remembered when photos were precious because film was expensive, when friendships required effort because you couldn't just click like on someone's life updates. That world felt more real to him, more honest, more meaningful. "They call it living your best life," Marcus scoffed, making air quotes with perfectly manicured fingers. But what they're really doing is living no life at all. Every moment filtered, edited, curated for consumption. When did we decide that reality wasn't good enough? His studio was a shrine to what he considered real journalism. Framed front pages from major newspapers, signed books from respected authors, awards from professional organizations that predated the social media revolution. Everything in the room spoke to substance over style depth, over surface, truth over performance. Marcus pulled up more examples on his screen. Vacation photos obviously staged for maximum envy family gatherings, where everyone was staring at phones instead of each other, inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos that screamed, "Look how profound I am." This is what passes for authentic human connection in 2024. He said, his voice dripping with disdain. Performative happiness, manufactured moments, lives lived entirely for the approval of strangers who would scroll past your obituary without pausing. What Marcus couldn't see from his soundproofed studio was his mother in the kitchen carefully wiping down her phone screen with a soft cloth. The device was 3 years old, its protective case cracked from the time she'd dropped it, rushing to answer a call from the hospital about her husband's final heart attack. But she treated it like a precious artifact because of what it contained. The saddest part, Marcus continued building to his crescendo, is that they think this is normal. They think constant documentation equals meaningful experience. They think digital validation equals real love. They've traded authentic relationships for algorithmic approval, and they don't even realize what they've lost. His comment section exploded with agreement. Older viewers shared stories about kids these days and their phone addictions. Parents worried about their children's social media habits. Teachers complained about students who couldn't focus without constant digital stimulation. Marcus fed off their validation like a digital drug, even as he condemned others for seeking the same rush. "We need to return to real life," he declared. "Real conversations, real relationships, real experiences that don't need to be photographed to be meaningful." As he wrapped up his introduction, Marcus felt the familiar satisfaction of a message well delivered. Another video that would generate hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, and countless shares among people who agreed that society was going to hell in a smartphone-shaped handbasket. "Stay tuned," he said, flashing his trademark knowing smile. "Because today I'm going to show you exactly what we've lost and why it matters more than you think." Marcus didn't know that in the kitchen his mother had just opened her photo gallery and was scrolling through 3 years' worth of memories. Pictures of Marcus winning awards, Lisa's wedding family dinners, their father's last birthday. Digital breadcrumbs of a life lived fully documented lovingly and treasured completely. The collision between his philosophy and her reality was exactly 18 minutes away. The mother's treasure. Eleanor Chen set her reading glasses on the kitchen counter and opened her phone with the careful precision of someone who had learned technology later in life, but embraced it completely. At 72, Eleanor was everything Marcus thought represented authentic living. She had raised 2 children without documenting their every milestone on social media. She had maintained friendships through handwritten letters and long phone calls. She had loved her husband for 48 years, without ever posting about their relationship online. But 3 years ago, when her grandson Tommy had given her an iPhone for her birthday, Eleanor had discovered something beautiful in the digital world her son so passionately condemned. The phone contained 2 847 photos. Each one was a treasure Eleanor had carefully curated, not for strangers' approval, but for her own joy. Pictures of Marcus accepting a journalism award while she beamed in the audience. Lisa's twins taking their first steps. Her husband Robert in his hospital bed, weak but smiling, making faces at the camera during what neither of them knew would be their final photo together. Eleanor scrolled through her gallery with the reverence of someone handling family heirlooms. Here was Marcus helping her hang Christmas lights caught mid-laugh as he tangled himself in the cord. Here was Lisa teaching her granddaughter to bake cookies, flour dusting their hair like snow. Here was Robert in their garden, proudly showing off tomatoes that had grown larger than baseballs. "Fake life," she murmured, remembering fragments of Marcus's latest video that she'd overheard from his studio. Eleanor understood her son's frustration with social media's excesses, but she wondered if he truly understood what he was dismissing. The photo she returned to most often was taken on Christmas Day 2021. Marcus, Lisa, Robert, and Eleanor around their dining room table, all of them caught in genuine laughter at something Lisa had said about their father's attempt to carve the turkey. The image was slightly blurry because Eleanor's hands had been shaking. not from age, but from joy so pure it had made her tremble. Robert had died 6 weeks later. Eleanor touched the screen, gently zooming in on her husband's face. His eyes were crinkled with mirth, his hand reaching across the table toward hers. In the background, Marcus was doubled over with laughter, his usual serious demeanor completely abandoned. Lisa was wiping tears of hilarity from her eyes. It was the last photo of all of them together. "My precious memory," Eleanor whispered to the empty kitchen. She had tried to explain to Marcus once why the photo meant so much to her, how it captured not just their faces, but the sound of their laughter, how looking at it let her remember the smell of cinnamon cookies and the warmth of the fireplace, how it transported her back to a moment when her family was whole and her husband was alive, and everything felt perfect in a way that could never be recreated. Marcus had listened politely, but she could see in his eyes the same dismissive patience he showed when she asked him to help her with other technology problems. To him, it was just a digital image, a poor substitute for real memory. But Eleanor knew something her brilliant son didn't understand. Memories fade. Details blur. The exact sound of Robert's laugh was already becoming harder to recall. The precise way his eyes crinkled when he was truly happy was starting to slip away from her aging mind. The photo held those details hostage against time's erosion. Eleanor had printed the image and framed it, but the physical copy couldn't do what the digital version could. She couldn't zoom in to see the small scar on Lisa's hand from a childhood accident. She couldn't make out the title of the book Marcus had been reading that morning visible on the side table. She couldn't capture the way the afternoon light had painted golden highlights in Robert's silver hair. The phone version was alive in ways the printed photo wasn't. Eleanor opened her messaging app and scrolled through months of conversations with her children and grandchildren, photos of school plays and soccer games sent by Lisa, screenshots of positive reviews Marcus had received for his latest column, video messages from her grandchildren singing happy birthday from 3 states away. Each image was a thread in the tapestry of her family's life, a way of staying connected across distance and time. When Marcus criticized young people for living through their phones, Eleanor wondered if he understood that for some people, elderly people, distant grandparents, families separated by geography or circumstance, digital connection wasn't a poor substitute for real relationships. It was what made real relationships possible. Her neighbor Mrs. Patterson was 91 and saw her great-grandchildren only through FaceTime calls and shared photos. Eleanor's sister in California stayed close to the family through group texts and photo sharing. Her grandson at college sent pictures of his dorm room, his friends, his adventures, keeping Eleanor connected to his life in ways that would have been impossible in the pre-digital era Marcus romanticized. But Eleanor also understood her son's concerns. She saw teenagers at restaurants staring at phones instead of talking to each other. She noticed parents photographing their children's every moment instead of simply experiencing them. She recognized the difference between technology that enhanced human connection and technology that replaced it. The difference, she believed, wasn't in the tool itself. It was in how you chose to use it. Eleanor returned to the Christmas photo, her thumb tracing the outline of her husband's face on the screen. 3 years ago, if someone had told her she would treasure a digital image more than any physical possession, she would have thought they were crazy. Now she understood that love doesn't discriminate between analog and digital. Memory doesn't care whether it's preserved in a photo album or a phone gallery. Connection doesn't require physical presence when hearts are genuinely open to each other. From Marcus's studio, she could hear his voice rising in passionate denunciation of digital culture. Eleanor smiled sadly. Her son, who prided himself on seeing truth others missed, was blind to the truth sitting 30 feet away from him. Sometimes she thought the most precious things in life come in the most unexpected packages. Even if those packages happen to have cracked screens and outdated operating systems, Eleanor kissed her fingertip and pressed it gently to Robert's face on the phone screen, the same way she had kissed his forehead every night for 48 years. "Still here," she whispered. "Still real." The performance. Marcus was hitting his stride now 15 minutes into what he already knew would be one of his most popular videos. The comments were flowing like digital applause, validating every point he made about the emptiness of online validation. "Let me show you what I mean," he said, pulling up a compilation of influencer posts he'd prepared earlier. Here's a 22-year-old lifestyle guru posting her authentic morning routine. Notice how every single frame is perfectly lit, perfectly staged, perfectly fake. He clicked through images of avocado toast arranged like art installations, workout sessions that looked more like fashion shoots, and meditation poses that seemed designed more for aesthetic impact than spiritual growth. "This isn't living," Marcus declared. "This is performing life for an audience that doesn't actually care about you. These people have confused documentation with experience, curation with authenticity." His laptop showed 847 viewers watching live, with hundreds more joining every minute. The algorithm loved controversy, and Marcus had learned to feed it exactly what it wanted. Righteous indignation packaged in intellectual analysis, generational criticism disguised as social commentary. Marcus pulled up another example. A family vacation post where everyone was staring at their phones during what was supposedly a digital detox retreat. "Look at this," he said, his voice rising with practiced outrage. "They're at one of the most beautiful places on earth, and they're all staring at screens. Their children will remember this vacation not as time spent with family, but as time spent watching their parents ignore them for social media." What Marcus didn't mention was that his own family vacations had been interrupted by his constant need to check emails, review comments, and respond to industry gossip. The difference in his mind was that his digital distractions were professional necessities rather than social media vanity. "And don't get me started on the relationship posts." Marcus continued clicking to a new folder of screenshots. Young couples broadcasting their every argument and reconciliation like it's entertainment. Marriage proposals staged for maximum viral potential. Anniversary posts that read like marketing copy. He paused dramatically, allowing his audience to absorb the full horror of commodified love. When did private moments become public performance? When did intimate relationships become content creation opportunities? These people are so busy performing happiness that they've forgotten how to actually experience it. Marcus's own marriage had ended 8 years ago, partly because his ex-wife felt he was more invested in his public persona than their private relationship. But he framed that history differently in his mind. She simply hadn't understood the importance of his work, the necessity of his mission to preserve authentic culture in a digital wasteland. The tragedy. Marcus said, leaning closer to the camera for emphasis, is that they think this is what connection looks like. They think digital interaction equals human intimacy. They've traded quality for quantity, depth for breadth, meaning for metrics. His comment section exploded with agreement from viewers who felt vindicated in their own social media skepticism. Parents shared stories about teenagers who couldn't hold conversations without checking their phones. Teachers complained about students who seemed more interested in documenting class projects than learning from them. Marcus fed off their validation while remaining blind to the contradiction. His entire career was built on seeking approval from strangers online, packaging his thoughts for digital consumption, crafting his image for maximum audience engagement. But because he framed his content as educational rather than personal, he convinced himself he was different from the influencers he criticized. "And the photos," Marcus said, pulling up his final set of examples. "Oh, the photos. Every meal, every outfit, every mundane moment of their existence documented and shared like it matters to anyone but them." He clicked through hundreds of images, food photos, selfies, family gatherings, travel snapshots, everyday moments that people had chosen to preserve and share. This is what happens when you live for the camera instead of living for yourself, Marcus declared. Every experience becomes performative. Every memory becomes content. Every relationship becomes a photo opportunity. What Marcus couldn't see from his studio was Eleanor in the kitchen scrolling through her own photos with quiet reverence. Each image told a story. He would never know the birthday cake she'd photographed, because Robert had decorated it himself, his hands shaking from medication, but his heart full of love. The sunset she'd captured because it reminded her of their honeymoon 48 years earlier. The candid shot of Marcus and Lisa arguing over a board game, both of them grinning despite their competitive intensity. Real life happens when you put the phone down, Marcus continued. Real memories are made when you're present in the moment instead of documenting it. Real relationships develop when you talk to each other instead of performing for followers who don't actually know you. His voice carried the conviction of someone who believed absolutely in his own righteousness. Marcus had built his identity around being the adult in the room, the voice of reason, in a world gone mad with digital distraction. His criticism wasn't just professional opinion, it was personal mission. I grew up in a time when families talked to each other at dinner, he said, his tone taking on the nostalgic quality that always resonated with his older viewers. When friends made plans and kept them without documenting every moment, when relationships were private, personal, and real. Marcus paused for effect, knowing his audience was hanging on every word. We need to get back to that, he said. We need to remember what authentic human connection actually looks like. We need to choose reality over performance substance, over style, meaning over metrics. As he prepared for his conclusion, Marcus felt the familiar satisfaction of a message well delivered. Another successful video that would generate views, comments, and shares among people who agreed that digital culture was destroying authentic human experience. He had no idea that 30 feet away his mother was living proof that his entire philosophy was built on a false premise. Eleanor Chen was using technology exactly as he claimed was impossible, to deepen rather than diminish her connections, to preserve rather than perform her memories, to love rather than leverage her relationships. The collision between his certainty and her reality was exactly 3 minutes away. The interruption, Marcus was building toward his grand finale when he heard the soft knock on his studio door. "Not now, Mom," he called without breaking eye contact with the camera. "I'm in the middle of filming." The knock came again, more insistent this time. Marcus forced his expression to remain neutral for his audience, while frustration bubbled beneath the surface. His mother had lived with him for 2 years since his father's death, and she still hadn't learned to respect his filming schedule. "Excuse me for just one moment," he told his viewers, maintaining his professional composure. "Family interruption, you know how it is." The comments immediately filled with sympathy and shared experiences about relatives who didn't understand content creation schedules. Marcus felt validated in his annoyance as he muted his microphone and turned toward the door. "Mom, I'm live with 3,000 people right now. Whatever it is can wait 20 minutes. Eleanor's voice came through the door, soft but determined. "Marcus, honey, I need to show you something important." Important was a relative term with his mother. Last week's important interruption had been about a bird building a nest outside her window. The week before, she'd needed help figuring out why her phone's font had suddenly gotten larger. "I'm almost finished," Marcus said, his professional patience wearing thin. "Can you just—" The door opened, and Eleanor stepped into his studio carrying her cracked iPhone like it contained the crown jewels. Marcus's viewers could see everything now. His mother in her favorite cardigan, her silver hair slightly mussed from her afternoon nap, her lined face glowing with the kind of excitement that made him feel like a teenager being embarrassed in front of friends. "Mom, please!" Marcus hissed, gesturing frantically at the camera. "Not now!" But Eleanor wasn't looking at the camera or the ring lights or the professional setup that had intimidated her for 2 years. She was looking at her son with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Part sadness, part determination, part something that looked almost like pity. "I heard what you were saying about photos," she said quietly. about fake memories and performing for cameras. Marcus's stomach dropped. His mother rarely listened to his content, claiming she didn't understand all that computer stuff. The thought that she had overheard his passionate denunciation of digital culture while using her own phone filled him with a mixture of embarrassment and defensive anger. "We can talk about this later," he said through gritted teeth, acutely aware of his audience watching this family drama unfold in real time. Eleanor stepped closer, holding her phone screen toward him. "I want to show you something precious." Marcus glanced at the camera, then back at his mother, then at his computer screen, where comments were flowing like a digital river. His viewers were eating this up, the great social media critic being interrupted by his elderly mother with a phone in her hand. The irony was almost too perfect. "Mom, seriously, I'm in the middle of—" "Look," Eleanor said, simply extending the phone toward him. And despite his frustration, despite his professional mortification, despite his desire to maintain his authoritative image, Marcus looked. On the cracked screen of his mother's 3-year-old iPhone was the Christmas photo. Marcus saw himself first. Caught mid-laugh, his usual serious expression completely abandoned, his eyes bright with genuine joy. He remembered that moment, now remembered Lisa making some ridiculous joke about their father's turkey carving technique, remembered the way laughter had exploded out of him like champagne from a shaken bottle. Then he saw his father still alive in the digital amber of Eleanor's phone screen. Robert's eyes were crinkled with mirth, his hand reaching across the table toward Eleanor's, his face glowing with the contentment of a man surrounded by the people he loved most. And there was Lisa, tears of laughter streaming down her cheeks, her usual composure shattered by their collective hilarity. And there was Eleanor herself, captured in a moment of pure maternal happiness, surrounded by her whole family, everyone she had ever loved most contained in a single frame. Marcus stared at the image for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. The studio around him, the ring lights, the camera, the awards on the wall, seemed to fade away as he looked at this digital preservation of what might have been the last perfect moment his family had ever shared. "This is my most precious memory," Eleanor said softly. "Your father died 6 weeks after this was taken." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His viewers, his message, his mission. Everything vanished as he confronted the reality of what he was seeing. "Mom, it's not fake." Eleanor continued, her voice gentle but firm. "It's not performing. It's not meaningless documentation. It's the only way I can still see your father laugh. It's the only way I can remember exactly how happy we all were in that moment." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. His entire philosophy, his carefully constructed worldview, his passionate crusade against digital culture, all of it crumbled as he stared at his mother's most treasured possession. "I look at this photo every day," Eleanor said. "It helps me remember that your father's hands were warm that day, that Lisa had flour in her hair from baking cookies, that you laughed so hard you nearly fell out of your chair." She touched the screen gently, her finger tracing Robert's face with infinite tenderness. "Without this picture, those details would be gone forever. My memory isn't what it used to be, Marcus, but this phone remembers everything perfectly." Marcus looked up from the screen to meet his mother's eyes, and what he saw there changed something fundamental in his chest. She wasn't defending technology or arguing with his philosophy. She was sharing something sacred, something that transcended his academic debates about authenticity and performance. Eleanor was showing him love preserved in pixels, treasured in digital form, made meaningful not by its medium, but by its content. "Maybe," she said quietly, still holding the phone between them like an offering, "it's not about fake or real. Maybe it's about what we choose to love." Marcus stared at his mother, then at the phone, then at the camera that was still recording everything, broadcasting this moment of revelation to thousands of strangers who had tuned in to hear him condemn the very thing that now held his family's most precious memory. For the first time in his professional life, Marcus Chen was completely speechless. The crack in the foundation, the silence in Marcus's studio stretched like a held breath. 3,000 viewers watched in real time as their digital prophet confronted the sacred contradiction of his mother's treasured phone photo. The comments section exploded with reactions, some mocking Marcus's speechlessness, others defending Eleanor's obvious love for the image, still others demanding he return to his planned content. But Marcus couldn't hear any of it. The world had narrowed to the cracked screen in his mother's hands, and the impossible truth it contained. Eleanor lowered the phone slightly, but didn't put it away. "I have 2 847 photos on this phone," she said quietly. "Each one is a memory I chose to keep." Marcus blinked, his media-trained brain slowly processing what was happening. He was live broadcasting his confusion to thousands of people who had come to hear him deliver certainty about the digital world's corrupting influence. Instead, they were witnessing his worldview crack in real time. "Mom," he said carefully, "we can talk about this after—" "No." Eleanor interrupted, and there was steel in her voice that Marcus rarely heard. "I want to talk about it now. While you're telling all these people that photos like mine are fake and meaningless." She held up the phone again, and Marcus couldn't help but look at the Christmas image. His father's face smiled back at him with an expression he would never see again, in life preserved forever in digital amber. "Tell me what's fake about this," Eleanor challenged. "Tell me what's meaningless about being able to see your father's last laugh whenever I need to remember that he was happy." Marcus glanced desperately at his computer screen. The view count was climbing rapidly. Controversy always drove engagement, and nothing was more controversial than a public figure's philosophy being challenged by his own mother in real time. It's different, Mom," he said, trying to maintain some semblance of his professional authority. "What you have is personal memory preservation. What I'm criticizing is the performative aspect of social media, the way people, what?" Eleanor asked. "The way they share moments that matter to them. The way they document experiences they want to remember. The way they try to stay connected to people they love." Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his intellectual feet. His mother's questions weren't theoretical or abstract. They were cutting directly to the heart of his arguments with the precision of someone who had lived through both the analog and digital eras. Eleanor walked to his desk and gently set her phone down, where both Marcus and the camera could see it clearly. "I want to show your audience something," she said. "Mom, no, you don't understand how this works." But Eleanor was already swiping through her photo gallery with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was looking for. "Here," she said, stopping on an image of Marcus at his college graduation 23 years earlier. "This was taken with a film camera. We had to wait 3 days to get it developed, and it cost us $12 for a roll of 24 pictures." She swiped to the next image, Marcus receiving his first journalism award 5 years later, this one clearly taken with an early digital camera. "This one we could see immediately, but the quality wasn't very good. We could only take about 50 photos before the memory card was full." Another swipe revealed a more recent image. Marcus speaking at a journalism conference, the photo clearly taken with a modern smartphone and shared to his mother through text message. "And this one," Eleanor said, "I received 30 seconds after it was taken. Lisa sent it from the audience. I was able to see my son succeeding in real time even though I couldn't be there in person." Marcus watched his own life scroll past in technological progression, each image representing not just a moment in time, but an evolution in how memories could be captured, shared, and preserved. "Which one is real?" Eleanor asked. "Which one is fake? Which one matters more? The expensive film photo I waited days to see, or the instant digital image that let me share my pride with my daughter immediately?" The question hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Marcus's comment section was in chaos. Some viewers were defending his original position, arguing that Eleanor was missing the point about social media's performative nature. Others were siding with her perspective, sharing their own stories about meaningful digital memories. Still others were simply enjoying the spectacle of a public intellectual being schooled by his elderly mother. But Marcus wasn't reading comments anymore. He was staring at the progression of images on his mother's phone, watching his own life documented across 3 decades of technological change. "You know what I do with these photos?" Eleanor asked, returning to the Christmas image. "I don't post them anywhere. I don't share them with strangers. I don't care about likes or comments or followers." She touched the screen, gently zooming in on Robert's face. "I just look at them when I miss your father. I scroll through them when I want to remember Lisa's wedding day. I send them to your sister when she's having a hard time and needs to remember that she's loved." Eleanor looked directly at Marcus, then at the camera, then back at her son. "You're so worried about people performing their lives that you've forgotten some of us are just trying to preserve them." Marcus felt something fundamental shift in his chest. Not just his opinion about social media or digital culture, but his understanding of what it meant to judge other people's choices about how they processed love loss and memory. He started, then stopped. For the first time in his professional career, Marcus Chen didn't know what to say. Eleanor smiled sadly and picked up her phone. "I'll let you finish your video, honey. But maybe think about this. Every photo you showed your audience tonight was precious to someone. Every fake moment you mocked was real to the person who chose to capture it." She paused at the door and looked back at her son, who was still staring at the space where her phone had been. "Your father used to say that the heart doesn't care about the format of love, only about its presence." With that, Eleanor left Marcus alone with his camera, his audience, and the smoking ruins of his certainty. The silence that followed was the loudest thing he had ever heard. The reckoning. Marcus stared at his camera for 37 seconds without speaking. An eternity in digital content terms. His audience was fracturing in real time. The comment section split between those defending his original message and those moved by Eleanor's intervention. Some demanded he continue his planned critique. Others begged him to address what had just happened. A few simply typed variations of, "Damn, your mom just destroyed your whole argument." Marcus could feel his professional persona crumbling like wet cardboard. For 15 years he had built his career on intellectual certainty, on being the voice that cut through cultural confusion to deliver uncomfortable truths. Now he sat in his perfectly lit studio, surrounded by awards and accolades, completely undone by his 72-year-old mother and her cracked iPhone. He began, then stopped. Started again. "That was my mother, Eleanor Chen." The words felt strange in his mouth, humanizing himself to an audience that had come to see him as an authority figure rather than someone's son. "And that photo she showed me." Marcus paused, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that destroyed his carefully cultivated on-camera composure. "That photo contains my father who died 3 years ago. It's the last picture of our whole family together." Comments began shifting tone. The mockery faded, replaced by empathy from viewers who had lost their own parents, who understood the weight of final photographs, who recognized the sacred nature of preserved memory. Marcus looked directly at his camera and did something he had never done in 15 years of content creation. He told the complete truth about his own contradictions. "I've spent tonight telling you that digital photos are fake, that social media memories are meaningless, that people who document their lives are living for cameras instead of themselves." He paused, his voice catching slightly. "But my mother's most precious possession is a digital photo, and watching her hold it, seeing how much it means to her," he trailed off, staring at his hands. "I realized I might be wrong about some things." The admission hung in the air like a confession. In the world of online content creation, being wrong wasn't just professionally dangerous, it was existential death. Audiences followed creators for certainty, for clear answers to complicated questions. Admitting error was admitting fraud. But Marcus pressed on. "My mother has 2 through 847 photos on her phone. I heard that number and my first instinct was to roll my eyes. Another person with too many digital images cluttering their device with meaningless snapshots." He looked up at the camera. But what if they're not meaningless? What if each one represents a moment she chose to preserve because it mattered to her? Marcus pulled up his own phone and opened his photo gallery for the first time in months. 14,003 images stared back at him. Everything from screenshots of positive reviews to photos of restaurant meals he'd forgotten eating. "I have 14,000 photos on my phone," he admitted to his audience. "Most of them are probably meaningless, but some—" He scrolled through images, his expression softening as he encountered unexpected memories. "Some of them are my father teaching my nephew to fish, my sister's graduation from medical school, my ex-wife laughing at something I can't remember saying." He paused on an image from 5 years earlier. Robert Chen in their backyard, dirt-covered and grinning as he showed off a tomato the size of a softball. Marcus had taken the photo to tease his father about his gardening obsession, but now it was one of the few images he had of his father's hands, still strong and steady, creating life instead of mourning its absence. "The difference between meaningful and meaningless isn't the medium," Marcus said slowly, working through the thought in real time. "It's the intention behind it. It's what we choose to do with the tools we have." Comments were pouring in now from viewers sharing their own stories. A grandmother who stayed connected to distant grandchildren through video calls. A military father who documented his deployment so his children could see his daily life. A teenager who photographed her aging grandmother's hands because she wanted to remember them exactly. Marcus read several comments aloud, his voice growing stronger as he processed the complexity he had oversimplified for years. Someone just wrote, "My dad has Alzheimer's. The photos on my phone are the only way he remembers our family anymore." Marcus looked up from his screen. How do I respond to that? How do I tell someone that their digital memories are fake when they're literally preserving their father's sense of identity? Another comment. "I'm deployed overseas. My wife sends me photos of our baby's first steps, first words, first everything. Those fake digital moments are the only way I can be part of my child's real life." Marcus felt the weight of his influence in a way he never had before. 3 million subscribers had listened to him condemn the very tools that were helping people maintain connections, preserve memories, and share love across distance and time. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "I've been so focused on criticizing the worst examples of social media that I forgot about the best ones. I've been so worried about people performing their lives that I ignored the ones simply documenting them." He looked directly into the camera, abandoning the polished authority that had defined his on-screen presence for 15 years. "My mother was right. It's not about fake or real. It's about what we choose to love." The words felt like stepping off a cliff. Marcus had built his entire brand on being the critic, the skeptic, the voice of intellectual superiority over digital culture's excesses. Admitting nuance, acknowledging complexity, confessing uncertainty. These were career-ending moves in the world of online content creation. But as Marcus looked at the comments flowing past his screen, stories of love preserved in pixels, families connected through screens, memories saved from the erosion of time, he realized that being right mattered less than being honest. "I don't know what this means for my show," he said. "I don't know how to criticize social media's problems while respecting its possibilities. I don't know how to balance concern about digital culture's excesses with appreciation for its genuine benefits." He paused, smiling for the first time in the entire video. "But maybe admitting I don't know everything is a better place to start than pretending I know everything." Marcus reached for his phone and did something he had never done in any of his videos. He took a selfie with his audience in the background, capturing the moment when certainty gave way to humility. "Maybe some moments are worth documenting after all," he said, looking at the image on his screen. "Even the uncomfortable ones, especially the uncomfortable ones." The comments section exploded with support, criticism, confusion, and gratitude in equal measure. Marcus Chen, digital culture's harshest critic, had just become its most unlikely convert. The revelation: Marcus ended the live stream with his most viewed video in 2 years and a comment section that would generate discussion for weeks. But the real conversation was waiting for him in the kitchen. Eleanor sat at their small dining table with her phone beside a cup of chamomile tea, scrolling through photos with the patient attention of someone revisiting a lifetime of memories. She looked up as Marcus entered, his professional composure completely abandoned. "That was brave, honey," she said simply. Marcus slumped into the chair across from her, feeling emotionally drained in a way that had nothing to do with creating content and everything to do with confronting truth. "I think I just destroyed my career." Eleanor smiled and turned her phone toward him. "Look at this one." The screen showed Marcus at age 7, gap-toothed and grinning, as he held up a crayon drawing of what might have been their family dog or a purple horse. The artistic interpretation was unclear. Eleanor had photographed the drawing with her phone 3 months ago when she'd found it in a box of childhood keepsakes. "I took this picture because I wanted to remember how proud you looked," she said. "You were so excited to show me your art. You said it was going to hang in a museum someday." Marcus stared at the image memory flooding back. He could almost smell the crayons, could almost feel the construction paper's rough texture under his small fingers. "Do you think 7-year-old Marcus was being fake when he created that drawing?" Eleanor asked. "Do you think I'm being performative by preserving it on my phone? Of course not, but then why is it different when a 20-year-old posts their art on Instagram, when a parent photographs their child's drawings and shares them with grandparents, when someone documents their creative process because it brings them joy?" Marcus opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The logic was unassailable, but it contradicted everything he had built his professional identity on. Eleanor swiped to another photo. Marcus's wedding day 11 years ago. He stood beside his ex-wife, Sarah, both of them radiant with the kind of happiness that felt invincible at the time. "You divorced Sarah partly because you felt she cared more about documenting your life than living it," Eleanor said gently. Marcus winced. The accusation was painfully accurate. Sarah had been an early adopter of social media, constantly photographing their meals, their trips, their quiet moments at home. Marcus had seen it as narcissistic performance evidence that she valued digital validation over authentic experience. "But look at this photo," Eleanor continued. "Look at how happy you both were. Look at how in love you looked." Marcus studied the image with adult eyes, seeing details he had missed during his bitter divorce proceedings. Sarah's hand on his chest, her eyes bright with genuine joy rather than performative happiness. His own expression of complete contentment, unguarded and real. "Sarah wasn't performing for the camera," Eleanor said quietly. "She was preserving a moment when everything felt perfect. And now, even though your marriage ended, you have proof that you were genuinely happy together. Isn't that worth something?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had spent years resenting Sarah's digital habits, but now he could see them differently. A young woman trying to capture and share the joy of being newly married, of building a life with someone she loved. Eleanor showed him more photos. His nephew's first steps captured in a burst of 23 images, because toddlers don't perform on command. Lisa's medical school graduation photographed from 12 different angles, because Eleanor's hands had been shaking with pride. Robert's last birthday party documented obsessively, because some part of Eleanor had known it might be his final celebration. "Each of these photos tells a story," Eleanor said. "Not a fake story, not a performed story, but a real story about people trying to hold on to moments that mattered to them." She opened her text messages and showed Marcus months of family conversations. Photos of grandchildren's school plays shared instantly across 3 states. Screenshots of Marcus's positive reviews sent with proud grandmother commentary. Images of Eleanor's garden shared with Robert's sister in Arizona, maintaining a connection forged over 40 years of shared plant swapping. "This is what social media actually looks like for most people," Eleanor said. "Not performance art for strangers, but connection maintenance for people we love." Marcus studied the messages, seeing his family's digital ecosystem with fresh eyes. It wasn't the narcissistic display of ego he had assumed. It was a complex web of relationships maintained across distance and time, strengthened rather than weakened by technology's connective power. "But what about all the problems?" Marcus asked. "The fake influencers, The staged photos, the people who seem to live only for likes and comments. Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. Those problems are real. But so is this, she said, gesturing to her phone. So are the military families staying connected through video calls. So are the grandparents who see their grandchildren grow up through shared photos. So are the immigrants who maintain relationships with family in their home countries. She leaned forward, her expression serious. You've spent so much time criticizing the worst examples that you've ignored the ordinary good ones. You've been so worried about people performing their lives that you've forgotten most people aren't performing at all. They're just living and sharing pieces of that life with people they care about. Marcus felt the last pillars of his worldview crumbling. So what am I supposed to do now? My entire platform is built on criticizing digital culture. 3 million people follow me because I tell them social media is destroying authentic human connection. Eleanor smiled and patted his hand. Maybe start by admitting that it's more complicated than that. Maybe acknowledge that technology is just a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or badly. She picked up her phone and returned to the Christmas photo, her expression softening as she looked at Robert's preserved smile. Your father never lived to see a smartphone, she said. He died thinking email was complicated, but he would have loved this photo. He would have understood that love doesn't care about the format, only about the intention behind it. Marcus stared at his mother, this woman who had raised him to think critically and question assumptions, now teaching him that his critical thinking had become dogma, his questioning had become condemnation. I don't know how to walk back 15 years of content, he admitted. Eleanor reached across the table and took his hand. You don't walk it back, honey. You walk it forward. You help people understand the difference between meaningful and meaningless uses of technology. You teach them to be intentional about how they document and share their lives. She squeezed his fingers gently. You use your platform to promote wisdom instead of judgment, nuance, instead of condemnation, understanding instead of superiority. Marcus looked at their joined hands and realized his mother had just given him the blueprint for rebuilding his career on a foundation of complexity rather than certainty. Will you help me? He asked. Eleanor smiled and lifted her phone. Let's start with a photo, she said. Something real to remember this moment by. As the camera clicked, Marcus Chen began the hardest and most important work of his professional life, learning to see the world as it actually was, rather than as his biases had convinced him it should be. The image on Eleanor's phone showed a son and mother hands clasped across a kitchen table, both of them smiling with the kind of genuine joy that no amount of filters could fake. It was, Marcus realized, the most authentic moment he had experienced in years, and it was preserved forever in pixels. The new beginning. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood in the same studio where his certainty had cracked, but everything else had changed. The walls still displayed his journalism awards, but they were now accompanied by printed photos from his mother's phone gallery, images that told the story of his family's love in analog and digital formats side by side. The Christmas photo held pride of place printed on canvas and hung where Marcus could see his father's laugh every day. Good evening, truth seekers. He began using the same opening he'd employed for years. But his tone was different now. Less authoritative, more conversational. Less certain, more curious. Today marks 6 months since my mother taught me that I had been wrong about something fundamental. 6 months since I learned that the digital world I'd spent years criticizing was more complicated, more nuanced, and more human than I had ever allowed myself to see. The channel had evolved dramatically. Reality Check with Marcus Chen now featured regular segments about thoughtful technology use, digital literacy, and the difference between meaningful and performative online behavior. His subscriber count had initially dropped as some followers abandoned him for admitting uncertainty, but it had since grown beyond its previous peak as new viewers were drawn to his more nuanced approach. Marcus pulled up his mother's Christmas photo on screen, the same image that had shattered his worldview half a year earlier. This photo changed everything for me, he said. Not because it proved social media was good or bad, but because it proved that the value of any documented moment depends entirely on the love and intention behind it. He clicked to a new folder of examples, but these weren't the performative influencer posts he used to mock. Instead, he showed thoughtful uses of digital documentation, a deployed soldier reading bedtime stories to his children via video call, an elderly woman teaching her granddaughter family recipes through shared cooking videos, a teenager documenting her grandmother's stories about immigrating to America. The question isn't whether we should document our lives, Marcus continued. The question is why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and what we hope to accomplish. His approach to criticism had become more surgical, more specific. Instead of condemning all social media use, he focused on genuinely problematic behaviors, the influencers who endangered themselves for content, the parents who exploited their children for views, the platforms that deliberately designed addictive features. But he also celebrated positive examples, the educators using TikTok to make learning accessible, the activists documenting social justice movements, the ordinary people sharing their expertise and creativity with global audiences. Marcus had learned to see technology as his mother did, not as inherently good or evil, but as a tool whose value depended entirely on how it was wielded. My mother, Eleanor Chen, taught me something profound, Marcus said, and his voice carried a warmth that hadn't been present in his earlier videos. She taught me that wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. The camera